I write a blog for our website, emerymulling.com, and I just wrote one on the challenges of the workplace changing. This is Emery Mulling, and welcome to our weekly podcast where we're always helping millennials to be more successful in their careers. And we have as a guest today a millennial, a real live millennial, and I'm going to be answering her questions on whatever she wants to ask me about. So why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, and you can try to stump me as the interviewee.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Kimberly Houghton. I am currently the Assistant Director of Sales at the Grand Hyatt, Atlanta, in Buckhead. I majored in Hospitality Management from the University of Alabama. Roll Tide.
And you're very proud of that.
I am very proud of it. Nick Saban forever. I guess, what else do you want to know?
That's good.
Okay.
You've done a lot in your career, and I'm impressed. Okay, now's your time to try to stump me as a interviewee, so ask me anything you'd like to know.
Okay, perfect. So this is my first time in a leadership role. So I'm asking you, what is some advice that you would have for the first-time managers and first-time leaders?
Excellent question, because there are a lot of young millennials in our viewing audience who are in the same situation. How long have you been in a leadership position?
So I've always been kind of a leader on my team, having newer colleagues always look up to me, but this is my first official title as a director, and I'm leading a team of about 5 sales managers.
And how long?
And I've been doing that for a year and a half now.
A year and a half. It's not several months. I'm going to give you some advice that I've given a lot of millennials. You need to be very observant of other leaders in the organization. You work for a very large company, and you have to decide if you like that corporate culture, if you want to stay there and go up. If you do, then you need to pattern yourself and learn everything you can about being a leader in that corporate culture, in that environment. Being a leader over here in this company can be very different than being a leader in another corporate culture. And you have to decide what you want to do. If it's a more formal or a less formal, a more corporate or a more entrepreneurial environment. I would encourage you, I'm selling now, so put your hand in your pocket.
Okay.
I wrote a book, The Mulling Factor, and in that Mulling Factor, it has an assessment tool written by a PhD from Virginia and validated by a PhD from Tennessee. You know, the two wrong schools, because you're from University of Alabama. But it shows the ideal boss and ideal work environment. Most young people and non-millennials really try to decide on what kind of work they want to do. We did a study, a 10-year study at Mulling, my company I've had for 36 years, and we asked, why were you terminated? These are not people that were laid off or quit, why you were fired. 5% of the time only was about the work. 30% of the time, work environment. 65% boss. 95% of the time, you were misemployed rather than the 5% due to the work. So you not only need to decide on what kind of leader you want to be, but where you want to be a leader. Yes.
Thank you. My next question kind of relates to that.
Good.
It's not necessarily about leadership, but it's about how to create a team culture. Millennials and in hospitality, we really want to create a culture for our team. And do you have any suggestions on that or things that you've seen that have been successful?
There are corporate cultures and there are subcultures. Working in sales is different than working in HR, is different than working in marketing.
Totally. We're more fun.
Exactly. And certain people, if they're correctly employed, certain people are very well suited for a sales environment or accounting environment, and a lot of times those are very, very different depending on the company. You're the leader of the team. I think at a staff meeting, you should ask the team, there is a 5-person team, what do they define as a good corporate culture? I wouldn't ask them what they want.
Right.
I'd ask them to define it and listen very carefully. Now, when I was in corporate America and I would do what do you think surveys, and I used to be with a bank, and I would go from branch to branch to branch and give these surveys, what do you think? And I always told them on the results, there are short-term fixables, there are long-term fixables, and there are non-fixables. And I know one time in a branch, a wall was painted this bright orange, and everybody complained about it. I told the branch manager, paint that wall next week. They don't like it. That's a short-term fixable. But if somebody wanted to change the location of the branch, that is probably a non-fixable. A long-term fixable is changing a certain policy of the way that the bank could do business a little bit better. So when they are describing a culture that they define as a good culture, you've got to let them know that they have to be realistic. I had to let the survey participants know that some things are just not going to change, and you have to buy into that.
Right.
Because some people want to change the whole company, not just their department.
Right.
Okay, now, loaded question.
Okay.
Of the 5 people that you would be asking these questions to, how long have they been in the workplace? So these other young millennials, have they been there 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Most of them are millennials. The sales team is millennials. Everyone's younger than me.
Oh, okay.
We just hired someone that is not a millennial.
Not a millennial?
He's older
Really?
than a millennial.
Oh, I wouldn't have hired him. Well, you've got some young people.
Yeah, so majority are young people, and the culture question really came up before we hired the other person,
Right.
the newer person. So, yes, they're all probably, anywhere from like 24, which that might not even be considered millennial anymore, to 29.
The millennial, officially, the millennial today is from 25 to 40, some people say to 38, but we are patterning our podcast shows to go down to 20 people in college, that's the Gen Zs, and the people who have been out of college, 22, 23, 24, because the youngest millennial is 25. The reason I'm asking for how old they are, I, at 24, 23, whatever, had some naivety.
Right.
And I'm not critiquing that as a part of being a millennial, being a young person. So you have to listen as their leader, and you've been in the business world a few years. You have to set expectations. You have to listen to what they want. But there's a hidden agenda here. You need to listen to who is asking for what. That will tell you how realistic they are, what they really want, and if you can really give them what that individual wants. Some people may be a bad fit because they say we need popcorn machines and ping pong tables and all that, which some IT companies have. Nothing wrong with that. But I have a feeling the big company you work with and their corporate culture probably would not allow that. And then later, individually, you need to give advice to that person about how realistic they need to be in expectations of that corporate culture.
Perfect.
Good. Knowledge is power.
Yes.
So be sure to ask and listen carefully. That's the fun part about being in leadership.
I know. I'm learning. My next question is, so how do you manage or how do you handle a micromanaging boss? I'm definitely not a micromanager. I do not like to be micromanaged.
Good.
However, other leaders above me may have micromanaging tendencies, and then some of my friends in their roles, when I reached out to them to say, what kind of questions are you looking for, how to handle a micromanaging boss?
In my company, Mulling Corporation, we provide executive coaching. The 2 most common skill sets that we have to coach, number 1 is avoiding conflict avoidance. And number 2, guess what, is delegation. Now, a person who stands over someone, over the shoulder, doesn't trust not only you but anybody else. They've got to know exactly what is happening all the time. Some people like that. It would drive you and me crazy. I understand that.
I don't have time for that.
That's right. And I've had to coach people who had a controlling, bureaucratic, stand over the shoulder and want an update every 30 minutes. There's a way to handle this. Do they like email? Do they like text? What kind of communication do they like voicemail?
I would say email.
Okay.
Voicemail, texting is like a little too casual. I guess texting, email.
Well, let's just say email. Okay.
We have a lot of meetings.
Right. Okay. What I would do every morning when you get to work, and you can write it the night before and have it on your office email, send them an email. This is what we're going to be doing today. This is the progress that we made yesterday on this important project that they're standing over your shoulder. And then mid-afternoon or whatever, send them another email. And I'm not talking about a long book.
Right, just like a recap.
A recap. In other words, the reason they're coming in there and standing over your shoulder or calling you or whatever is they want to know what's happening. Give it to them.
Be proactive, get ahead of them.
That's right. And it will keep them off your back. And then after you've done that for 3 or 4 days or a week, I would go in there and ask, depending on what kind of relationship you have, and say, I've been trying to keep you better updated. Am I doing an adequate job? A lot of people don't want to ask that question because they're afraid what kind of answer they're going to get. No, it's not enough. I want it 5 times a day. Well, guess what? You either need to find a new boss or give it to them 5 times a day and try to keep them informed. There are several major reasons why somebody is not delegating. I'm afraid that the person that I delegated to is going to make a mistake. I'm going to look badly. I don't trust the person to do it correctly. I don't have time to train this person. What they don't understand, you take the time to train it one time, they've got it, and then it'll save you hours going into the future. Whatever it is, they don't like to delegate, which means they're a horrible leader and they don't know it. Keep them satisfied. More importantly, keep them informed, and they hopefully will stay off your back. If they don't after that, you got the wrong boss.
Okay, one more question, then we'll switch gears. So we have a lot of meetings. And I guess it's kind of a twofold question. One is, how do you get the most out of the meetings when you're the one holding them? And 2, how do you maybe suggest not to have as many meetings?
To your boss or someone? Or
No.
to the group, to the team?
I think that honestly, my job, we have a lot of meetings, but also amongst my peers, my friends, and my boyfriend, like, we're working from home, so I see that he has a lot of meetings. It's really just, how do we get the most out of meetings, or how do we decide which meeting could have been an email?
Right. First of all, if you're the leader,
Right, and since I am in leadership now, I have the chance to kind of
to clean it up.
and make an impact and give advice to my friends as well.
There is a cardinal rule about meetings. Have an agenda.
Yes.
1 page. And don't write a paragraph by each topic. Put the one-liner of the topic. Maybe it's 5 topics. If it's an hour's meeting and you've got 20 topics, that's not a good thing.
Right.
That's a few minutes per topic. So you have to pick and choose, but have your agenda and stick by the agenda. Now, the reason I'm stressing that, one of the big problems in any meeting is somebody will throw in a tangent, and they'll want to discuss what they want to discuss, and that's not good. So stay on topic by agenda. A lot of times it's good to send it out in advance so they'll be prepared. Some people like to be prepared. They don't like to wing it. But if one person or 2 people out of your 5 people are always trying to discuss what they want to discuss and going into a tangent, you need to take that 1 or 2 people privately to the side and say, I notice that you mean well. I understand you have questions, but for the sake of the other people, I need for you to stay on agenda. Now, if they keep on doing it, you got to have another conversation.
Right.
And at some point, you've got to say, after 3 or 4 times telling this, you don't need to come to the meetings if you can't follow along.
Lay down the law.
Now, no loaded question. You know your employees, the 5. Do
Yes.
you think, do you have one person in there that is a tangent specialist?
No, we have someone that likes to voice their opinion.
A long time.
Right. Well, no, I think we don't really have like time waster, like people that take up the time of the meetings. I think it's just the amount of meetings we have for like one thing that like probably could have been an email.
Okay.
But I agree with you on the agenda being a big thing. That way, everyone just, the expectations have been set.
And keep them on point.
Right.
Now, let's discuss too many meetings.
We'll have meetings for meetings.
Oh, yeah. Well, guess whose fault that is? It's your fault. Because if you're the boss and you're having too many meetings, you need to talk about this in a staff meeting and say, we're having too many meetings.
Right.
If they like those number of meetings, they're not working very hard, and there's a problem,
Right.
another problem there we can discuss later in this podcast. But you need to say we're having too many meetings and have 2 or 3 examples. And if somebody wants to have a meeting, you don't think it warrants a meeting, we can get this done by email, tell them.
Say it. Okay.
And just cut it out. Now, that's downward communication. Upward communication, that's a whole different ball game. And if your boss loves meetings, he or she may, because they like to stand over your shoulder so they can be in control in that room for 2 or 3 hours, and I'm going to know everything everybody's thinking and everybody else is bored to death. You may want to mention to them, if you think you can, that you have had some requests, you've heard some requests, could we have fewer meetings? Now, if you get a bad response from that question, you just have to go to the meetings, and there's nothing you can do about it. So now you have a boss who likes to stand over your shoulders. You have a boss who likes to have way too many meetings, and it's wasting a lot of time. You have to ask yourself, are you in the wrong company or under the wrong boss? And that's a serious question. You can either fix it, long term, short term, and I'm talking about a boss as well as a survey response.
So my next question is kind of switching gears, but due to COVID-19,
Telecommuting?
Yeah, telecommuting, virtual working, whatever the right term is, has become really big.
Very big.
And if the world shifts kind of to that direction, what advice do you have for people that are trying to network with senior leaders, keep engaging their team when it's all virtual? You can't really run into someone in the hallway at this point. It has to be maybe a more formal, like email invite. So I don't know. Do you have any tips for that?
Kimberly, you have just asked a very timely question, virtual employment. I have a theory. The workplace will change permanently. There are defining moments in the workforce in Americans' history that changed the workplace. None of us were alive in World War II and World War I, but in World War II, back then, the men went to the army and the women went into factories and everywhere else to work. Well, guess what? The men came back, guess who had to go home? And it changed the workplace because of that. Because of the pandemic, there are a lot of people, and a lot of our clients have told me this, and it's not hourly employees, it's professional level people, and they're saying, I like working from home. I don't have to get up and get dressed as much. I'm saving gas, and they're actually being more productive. Now, when the employers figure out that they're being more productive, they, in my opinion, and I had a Zoom conference call this morning discussing this with around 15 business owners, and they agreed. A lot of these business owners do not know how to spell the word change, and they don't like change. They got their little world and they want to keep it. And those are not real good managers and business people. But because of this, maybe they will, in my opinion, they will see that it's better to have some of these people working virtually, depending on what the job responsibility is and the reality. In my opinion, it's going to be about 15 to 20%, maybe even more, employees who are going to want to work virtual. Now, if that happens to you or one of your employees, you have to learn how, as a manager or one of your supervisors has to learn how to manage people who are working virtually. It is very different. And then, and by that I mean you've got to know how to hold them accountable. You've got to have shorter rather than longer term goals, not to stand over their shoulder, but it's like project management. These are the sub deadlines and these are the deadlines because they're out there.
Right.
So it's not closer supervision, it is different supervision, and a lot of supervisors do not understand that. Now, let's talk about being a virtual employee. It is my recommendation that if you're working full-time virtually, that you go into the office at least once a week to a staff meeting in person, because the problem with being a virtual employee, you can be forgotten. And if you're an ambitious person, college graduate, well-educated, want to go up, and you're sitting at home all the time, somebody sitting in the office is going to out-politic you, get better exposure, and guess who's going to lose that game? So you have to, if the boss is not, the boss should be taking special effort to have more contact with a virtual employee. Most are not going to do that. It is your responsibility to manage your own career, get exposure, communicate, and go in whenever you can for staff meetings and let them know who you are. It will be a different way to manage.
Interesting. That's great.
Are you working virtually now because of the pandemic?
I'm not. I'm actually furloughed right now, just because the hospitality industry was hit so
It's
hard
dead.
from this. But that actually, my friend just graduated with her MBA and is in a leadership program with a company, and they are completely remote right now. And she's in the leadership program. She's trying to, network and work her way through the organization. So she actually asked me to ask that question on her.
Good. Well, and there are a lot of our viewing audience who needs that answer. Thank you for asking that question. But let me add something else to it. You're virtual. You not only need to communicate more with your boss, but with your boss's boss, and even maybe that boss.
Right.
And my daughter, surprisingly, asked me for career advice. Now, I'm just shocked. When she was in high school, she would never have done that. But now she has finally figured out just how smart I am. But she will ask me a lot of times what to do at work. I tell her all the time, the best way to get ahead and the best way to become known in the company of how good you are is get positive exposure. Most people do not do that. Okay, loaded question.
Okay.
When you were employed,
Yeah.
did you spend enough time getting positive exposure to perpetuate your career? And be honest with yourself.
Yes, I feel that I've always done that because I have had such success so far in my career. I always kind of found out who the person was that was either going to take me under their wing or was going to help me get to the next step in my career. And I always just kind of went to them and asked for advice or tried to have a conversation with them. Anytime we have any corporate leadership come to our office, I always make sure that I go introduce myself, see what they're doing for lunch, ask if I can be part of the lunch, or know if I have a meeting with them, be able to bring something up, accomplishment, or just, not just be one of the people in the meeting, bring something to the table.
Okay, Kimberly, I want to profusely compliment you. 95% of the people don't do that. They think that the best thing they can do is to let their work stand for itself. That is not true. It's not always the most technically qualified person who gets ahead. It's the person who looks the part, acts the part and seems to be the part. Now, that's not fair. Welcome to the real world. And you're not very old. You haven't been in the workplace very long, and you are in a competitive industry. I want to compliment you for having enough sense and know-how to get the exposure, and that's where you are today. So continue doing that. You've done well, and I have a feeling, because I'm going to have you on as in the podcast again. You're really good, and you've asked great questions that a lot of millennials want. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I think you're going to replace me as the host. Thank you for joining us today on our podcast. We're doing this every week, helping millennials be successful and enjoy their career even more. See you next week.
Bye.